Move to beat dementia. That's the topic today for you and your aging parent, how exercise can really affect their cognitive capabilities. And it doesn't matter how old they are at this moment in time. It's never too late to start doing some of these activities. And one of the reasons that we want them to do those activities is because it does promote good brain health. And one way is it increases the blood flow and oxygen throughout the body. So it helps us cardiovascularly. And when you're exercising, it's moving blood throughout the body, including the brain. And that just ensures that our brains, our aging brains, receive enough oxygen and nutrients for better brain health. And it also, this is key, it helps to remove waste products from the brain cells. So think about if your aging parent doesn't do any activity, they just sit and watch TV, or maybe they read. They're not doing any kind of movement to get that blood flowing and to reap the rewards. Then that waste is not being removed and it's settling in those cells, which cannot be good for long-term cognitive health. Another area that I want to talk about with you guys is neurogenesis and the brain's plasticity. So exercise stimulates the production of something called BDNF, and that is a protein that promotes the growth and survival of neurons. And that's especially important in supporting the brain when we're looking at learning new things, and memory. And we know if we have aging parents, especially those of us who've had parents who struggled with dementia. My dad did not have dementia, but my mom, she did have dementia. They struggle with learning and retaining information, recalling information, memory. So it's so important. And the interesting thing about when you look at my parents, my dad walked every day, at least 3 miles a day. My mom never did any kind of exercise. Just saying. So if you see increased BDNF, that contributes to something called neurogenesis, which is the formation of new neurons. We can create new neurons. I don't know about you, but that blows me away. And it enhances what they call synaptic plasticity, which is just our brain's ability to adapt and kind of reorganize itself. So here's the bonus from that. The research that I was looking at said this plasticity is essential for learning new skills, forming memories, and recovering from brain injuries, whether that's a concussion or a mild TBI, traumatic brain injury, even significant brain injuries. I have seen that when I worked at the hospital. I had a young man that fell off of a balcony, and he came to the rehab hospital. I saw him sitting in a wheelchair. One eye was completely closed, and I'm going to call him Frank. Frank, he was just sitting there. Frank, fix eye, Frank, fix eye. The kiddo was pretty impaired. But at the end of inpatient rehab and outpatient, he was able to, just shows you how amazing our bodies and our brain and all of these things that work together, if we work on them, can regenerate and create new paths for learning and those new neurons and all the things that we've talked about so far and what we will talk about during the rest of this video. He is finished college, is married, and has children. So he's living his life. Is he probably the exact same person prior to his head injury? I bet if you were to ask his family, they would say no. But if he's 90% of who he was and he's a functioning human being and loving his life, then that's a huge success story. So way to go, Frank. Another reason that we want our aging parent to exercise on the regular, on the daily, if possible, at least 3 times a week. It helps with the reduction of inflammation and oxidized stress. So as we age, I mean, we're being bombarded in the environment on the daily with all the things in the air that we breathe. That are, our skin's the largest organ that we have. And I think it's 60 or 90 seconds after you put something on your skin that it gets into your bloodstream, super fast. So we're just being bombarded. The food we eat, the things we drink, and as time goes on, the older we get, it's a compounding effect. So it can damage brain cells. Exercise, and the research has shown, and this is another reason your parents should be exercising often, decreases those inflammatory markers and increases the production of antioxidants. So the antioxidants just help protect those brain cells from damage in the future and can help protect someone's brain health so that they may not develop dementia in the future. Another area is enhanced cognitive function. So here's just a few areas that will improve if you exercise. Attention, processing speed, executive function, that is such a big one, and memory. If you have a loved one and you're a caregiver, let me know, do they have trouble with executive function and or memory skills? Do they have trouble focusing, following through on tasks? Exercise can help, especially if they don't have the issues, but even if they do have issues and they're not so far down the path of that cognitive decline, if they're in the early stages, there's research that shows that the ship could be turned around. So I think it's important to know that. So the example I want to give you is that the research said that there are cognitive reserves. So that just helps the brain cope and compensate if there's an injury and just kind of protects it for future injury or things that may come against it to cause a decline. So what happens, so the takeaway of all of that information is the more you exercise and you put into that bank, that reserve, the better you are at keeping dementia at bay. The better chance you have, I guess I should say. Another benefit for all of us that exercise regularly, or your parents, and specifically your parents, because a lot of times as people age, they have less and less of social interactions, and they oftentimes tend to stay in the home and those kinds of things. It's a mood and mental health booster. What happens when you exercise is it produces endorphins, kind of that feel-good hormone. So it lifts your mood and it makes them have, better spirits, higher spirits. They don't get down in the mouth, as my granny would say. Not have mully grubs. Another one I just kind of alluded to, social interaction and engagement. So they could do all kinds of things. Group fitness. They could go to a gym. They could join a walking group. They could join where I live, there's lots and lots of hiking groups for all ages. Swimming, yoga, any of that. So they're getting the exercise and reaping all these rewards that we've talked about already regarding brain health and protecting their brain from decline so that they can live at home and be functional for as long as possible, hopefully forever. It also allows for those social interactions, which are key for cognitive stability, happiness, just having those back and forth exchange is super important. Interacting, they're not lonely, they have someone to talk to. It's kind of an emotional support system outside of their family. And I just think that's really cool. People, and especially introverts, I know that's probably harder for if they are not used to doing those kinds of things, but maybe as a family, you could start doing it, and maybe, they do their thing while you're there and you do yours. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do the things together, but get them in the door and kind of addicted to it, because it is addictive. People who exercise regularly, if you miss a day or two, you just don't feel the same, and you want that for your parent as well. Another one is, and we've talked about this, and I did a video on this only about sleep and how to get better sleep. I'll link it in this video if you care to watch that. But regulation of sleep patterns. Regular physical activity is proven to help people sleep better at night. And what that does, if you get good quality sleep, you're in that REM stage, that deep sleep, that it helps your brain to rest and recall, repair, and consolidate memories. So I think that's very interesting. I watched a podcast and the lady was talking about if you do not get in that deep sleep for long enough, your brain will not consolidate the memories of that day, and you will lose some of those memories. I think that's interesting. So it's like if you get in that deep sleep, it's filing those memories away in a filing cabinet, if you will, for you to go back later and say, oh, yeah, I remember we went to lunch and had blah, blah, blah. So rest, repair, and consolidate memories. And if we have poor sleep, the research shows in our aging parents specifically, poor sleep, no sleep, lack of sleep, however you want to say it, they are at a higher risk for dementia and or Alzheimer's. So what should your parents be doing? What are some more examples? So here's 3. To increase that heart rate that we talked about early on, to pump the blood through the body to the brain and to reap the rewards of that singular thing, they could do brisk walks. They could go swimming. Again, they could do biking. Anything that gets their heart rate up would be good. Strength training also is another thing, whether that's lifting weights or doing the resistance bands. That we've talked about also in another podcast, why it's so important for our aging parents to maintain and build muscle mass and work on their bone density. Because as they get older, they're at a higher risk for fractures once they hit the age of 65. It's a huge jump in, I think it's 75 or 80% of those people that break their hip every year. There's 300,000 in the U.S. alone. The majority are 65 and older. I don't think 65 is very old. And the closer I get to it, the less old I feel like it is. So they need to be stronger so they can get stronger and maintain, if nothing else, maintain what they have. But they can, if they consistently do this, the weightlifting or the resistance training, they can build. It's not as fast as when they were in their 20s or 30s, but it can happen if they're consistent. Target flexibility. So what could they do? They can work on balance. Yoga's great. Tai Chi, any of those kinds of things, those are really good too to help prevent falls. So if they are out walking and something happens and they kind of stumble, they can catch themselves. They have that reflex. So they're strong from doing all the things that they need to be doing. And the flexibility piece, it all ties together. It all ties together for them to have overall good health, not just physically, but cognitively. So the thing that I want to share with you guys from that podcast that I thought was super interesting, and this lady's a doctor out of New York from the academic world. She was saying that the research shows if your aging parent walks 3 times a week, 45 minutes to an hour, a good pace, not running, but just enough to get their heart rate up, that 30% declines their risk of getting dementia by 30%. 30%. That is insane. That's crazy. Everybody should be walking. I walk multiple times a day. I love walking. Who likes to walk? Do you walk at a slow pace, a medium, a fast? Do you jog? Let me know. Tried that in the past. Wasn't very good at it, but I love walking, being in nature. So we need to encourage those parents to please at least get out and walk. Like I mentioned earlier, my dad walked all the time. He did not have dementia. My mom never walked. She never exercised, and she did end up developing dementia in the end. So there's my little case study. So I walk all the time. Encourage your parents. Say, hey, look, Mom, Dad, I want you to be high-level functioning at all times. Let's exercise, let's get a plan in place, and let's follow this so that you stay as cognitively fit as possible, as well as physically fit. So you can enjoy your family and your life for as long as you walk on planet Earth. And while you're helping them build a healthy brain, you're also helping them keep dementia at bay, which does interfere, obviously, eventually when they're living alone and doing even the activities of daily living. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. Again, I'll put the link to that other video about sleeping, how to sleep well as we age, and all the tips and tricks in there I'll put in the description. Remember, hang in there and try to enjoy the journey. See you in the next one.